Welcome everyone to yet another very topical and very timely EMET webinar. We at EMET feel very strongly that in October 2019, the United States made a horrible mistake where they abandoned the Kurds, who had lost 11,000 lives fighting against ISIS. And unfortunately, we had lost 15. We know every life is precious, but 15 as opposed to 11,000 is quite a ratio. And they were abandoned to really fend for themselves. And we have worked, in EMET, we've worked since 2011 with the representatives of the Free Syrian Democratic Forces to try to get some support. We want right now a status update of what is going on with the Kurds. We're feeling a huge sense of kinship right now because I think my computer might have gone off a little. Okay. We're feeling a renewed sense of kinship right now because, unfortunately, we're seeing how a lot of assurances that were given to Israel under the Trump administration are now being reevaluated, as well as assurances like to the United Arab Emirates of their getting of the F-35s. As most of you are probably aware, there are approximately 45 million Kurds who are spread out among 4 continents, including Iraq, Iran, Syria, and Turkey. And the Kurdish people have often in their history been promised a free democratic nation or an independent Kurdistan. But unfortunately, that aspiration has never yet been realized. The Kurds are predominantly Sunni Muslim, but they're comprised of Jews, Yazidis, Christians, Shiite Muslims, and Zoroastrians. As of this week, last week, by now, the Syrian representative to the United Nations told the new Biden administration that Syria would engage with the United States if we end our, quote, interference in Syrian internal affairs, including terminating any remaining support that we give to the Kurds. So we're here to examine what is the status of the Kurdish population today, how many have been displaced from Syria and are living in refugee camps, how many are displaced internally and had to flee beautiful places that once was under their control, like Afrin. How has Iran's attempted occupation of Syria affected the Kurdish population? And of course, how has Turkey under Erdogan affected the Kurdish population, both in Syria and in Turkey? And I also want to add that there was a recent story this week in Bloomberg that Turkey under Erdogan said that they will compromise in their use of the very powerful S-400 anti-missile system that's been given to Turkey or bought by Turkey from Russia if America will abandon any remaining support of the YPG or the Kurdish fighters. So here to talk about this today are 2 wonderful people. Diliman Abdulkader, who is the co-founder and spokesman of a newly established and wonderful Washington-based advocacy organization, the American Friends of Kurdistan. It works to strengthen American-Kurdish relations through education and advocacy. And Diliman comes from a foreign policy and national security background. And he was previously, I'm proud to say, director of the Project for Kurdistan at EMET. He frequently publishes articles. I know he's an excellent writer pertaining to all sorts of developments in the Middle East, and he received his master's at the American University in Washington in international peace and conflict resolution. And Sinam Mohamad is also a wonderful friend. She's the representative of the Syrian Democratic Council to the United States. She's worked often closely together with EMET in getting support for the Democratic Federation of Northern Syria, which had been populated mainly by Kurds. She's written for the New York Times, for the Defense Post, among other places, and she wrote a brilliant analysis for the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. So Diliman, why don't you go first and just explain the situation today of the Kurds?
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be back with you, and thank you to my co-speaker, Sinam Mohamad of the SDC in Washington, D.C. Just to touch base on what you mentioned in your introduction, Sarah, regarding Syria's offer to the United States, it's basically let go of the Kurds and we can move forward. That is saying the Assad regime is what is offering to the United States is, hey, let's forget about the 500,000 plus civilians that have lost their lives in Syria since 2011, including the use of chemical weapons on multiple occasions. And then let's compare that to what Turkey is saying regarding the S-400. We want to compromise. We want to start negotiations with the United States if you give up your alliance with the Kurds. There's something in common here, is that the Kurds are seen as the enemy of these states, of Syria and Turkey, of Damascus and Ankara. The Kurdish card is always easy to play for these nationalists and Baathists in the Middle East. And unfortunately, that is why it's so important and critical for the United States to remain in Syria. And just to move on, with the new Congress, 117th Congress and the new administration, I feel that Washington right now has the right components to place pressure on Turkey compared to the past 4 years. The previous years, it was difficult to move forward because it was a individual relationship basis between Erdogan and President Trump. You really can't find an alternative policy or pathway to maneuver around that. This administration has promised that it will focus on human rights, that it will continue a normalization of communications between the two states, not a interpersonal communication status simply just by Erdogan calling the president and saying, hey, you got to do this, or Erdogan at the Oval Office showing a propaganda video of the Kurds, being linked to terrorism and whatnot, because we know these are false and rational policy cannot be formed around that. Just recently, just an update, just came out yesterday, in which the American Friends of Kurdistan played a huge role, and you might have seen this, Sarah, is that the 54 senators wrote a letter to President Biden stating that, hey, we have to focus on Turkey's human rights record, and we must pressure them. The previous administration at the very end took some light actions regarding the CAATSA sanctions. However, we know this is not enough. And the previous Syrian envoy, James Jeffrey, clearly believes, and he still continues to state this, is that the only problem we have with Turkey is the purchase and operation of S-400 missiles. This is not true. There's a laundry list of grievances that the United States has to focus on if we want to normalize our relations with Turkey. And I highly doubt that will happen anytime soon, especially under Erdogan. How we want to move forward regarding the Biden administration is that the Biden administration should carve its own path and not follow the Obama administration. Simply because it doesn't matter if you were in that administration before the past administration. The Obama folks, we all remember, they wanted to withdraw from Syria, and they also wanted to create a so-called safe zone in the area, literally in the area that was given to them during the October 2019 invasion. We were against that. The US presence in Syria, the Biden administration should look at the US presence in Syria as a tactical and symbolic and in the interest of the US rather than an endless war strategy. Because having 2,000 US forces as we did on October 2019 is not an endless war strategy. This is not 150,000 US forces. These are 2,000 forces who are not fighting in battles, but there to equip, train, and advise, and also, unfortunately, patrol along the border because of our so-called NATO ally Turkey is aggressive. It's in, and you know, the facts remain is that it is in the U.S. interest to stay in Syria. There's about today, the recent number from the Pentagon is that there's an estimated 900 U.S. troops inside all of Syria, much different from 2000. And you know, the areas that is under the Syrian Democratic Forces, which is not only Kurds but also Arabs, Yazidis, and indigenous Syrians, holds about 80 to 90% of Syria's oil resources. The facts remain: if you do leave Syria, the Assad regime is bankrupt. It's funded by Putin, and Iranian military is there to stay permanently. And if you leave that, that is literally allowing these adversaries to take control of these oil fields. And they are stationed right across the Euphrates River, which is very dangerous. We don't want to fund our adversaries simply because we don't have an appetite to keep 2,000 US forces there. That is not rational. One good thing we could say is that we already know that has taken place is the appointment of Brett McGurk. A lot of people do have mixed feelings about this appointment. He was the former special envoy to the global coalition to defeat ISIS. He is now appointed to the White House coordinator for Middle East and Africa. For Syria specifically, he is very knowledgeable on the ins and outs of the Kurds, and he is very knowledgeable on how Turkey operates and Turkey's intention. If I may read a quote that he gave in an interview after he left the Trump administration due to the 2019 withdrawal. He said this, and I quote, "I ran the ISIS campaign, 40,000 foreign fighters, jihadists from 110 countries around the world, all came into Syria to fight in that war, and they all came through Turkey. The caliphate is on the border of Turkey. We worked with Turkey. I was in Turkey more than any other country to have them seal their border, and they would not do it. They said they couldn't do it, but the minute the Kurds took parts of the border, they totally sealed it with a wall." End of quote. This is Turkey. This is what Kurds are trying to say, is that there is hard evidence that Turkey has an alliance with radical Islamic terrorists, Al-Qaeda affiliates, and Daesh, the Islamic State. This is not a secret. The European Union knows this. The United States is aware of this. And you know, this is the reality, is that we must look at Turkey for what it is and not what it was. The pressure the Kurds are facing today, yes, it's from the Assad regime and you know the actors across the river in West Syria, but its majority is comprised of Turkey. Turkey is in a civil war with its own Kurds inside Turkey, let alone the Kurds inside Syria and the Kurds in Iraq. As we speak, they're bombarding the autonomous region of Iraq, which is an internationally recognized autonomous region. Moving forward, the Biden administration must look at what's the actual map and the actors inside Syria. We have to recognize that, hey, they're here to stay. And if we want to have a say in the future of the Middle East, we have to stay there as well. The recent numbers show that Turkey has 114 military sites inside Syria. Russia has 83. Iran has 131. Hezbollah has 116 military sites, includes sites, housing of weapons, and also military bases. The United States only has 33 sites. As the largest military power in the world, and you only have 33 military sites with only 900 troops, and you control about 20, give or take 28% of Syria's territory in the northeast, which holds about 80 to 90% of Syria's oil resources, that is not very rational. And also, Put the Kurdish argument aside, that puts our forces at danger. It's not in America's interest to be to have such small force. It keeps allows our troops to be vulnerable. Another good step that we can look forward to is that, hey, the Biden administration through the Pentagon did acknowledge that they're there to fight Daesh and not there to guard the oil, as the previous administration clearly stated, we're there for the oil. I think that was a low blow to the Kurds, and we know American forces are not mercenaries, and our allies are not mercenaries, and they should not be there to guard resources. They're there to guard the humanitarian aspect of the Syria, because we don't want them to fall into the hands of adversaries. Our policy regarding American Friends of Kurdistan to the Biden administration and the 117th Congress is that it's very clear: demand that Turkey fully withdraw from Syria. This includes Afrin from the occupation, and this, Sarah and Sinam Khan knows this. We focused on this heavily in 2018 on Capitol Hill, is that it continues to be occupied by Turkey and radical Islamic terrorists. Afrin is a predominantly majority, 95% plus Kurdish territory. It is now Turkified, it's Islamified. There's Turkish flags flying there. And it doesn't look like anyone is putting any pressure. Now, Afrin, I argue that it was a Russian green light, but the United States, relating to the topic of our discussion, the United States did the same thing on a much larger scale in Northeast Syria with the Trump green light in Northeast Syria, which now they control a large swath of territory right across the river, across the border. Turkey also controls Idlib province, which houses, and going back to Brett McGurk's thoughts on this, is that he clearly stated Idlib province is Al-Qaeda's largest safe haven in the entire world. That's where they are. 15,000 Al-Qaeda affiliates are in Turkey and are in Syria. And that is controlled by Turkey. And we have not pressured Turkey on this at all. And we also must acknowledge Turkey's history. It's annexation, it's of occupation, it's of Turkification, and also to normalize these military gains. Look at Cyprus since 1974. Now they want a two-state solution, right? I mean, this double standard is, hey, we're going to take your land, we're going to bring a bunch of Turks there, we're going to raise a Turkish flag, and then eventually it's going to be ours. They're trying to do the same thing in Afrin. They're not going to return Afrin through negotiations. They're going to say, hey, there are Arabs here, Arabs that never lived there before. They're going to say, hey, there are Turks here, Turks that don't belong there. So we must pressure Turkey to withdraw. That's number one. Number two is to reassure the Kurds that, hey, America will stand by their side. That make it clear that this is a different administration. We will, and what I push for on Capitol Hill is to reset troop levels back to 2,000 prior to the 2019 invasion. Today it's at 900 troops. Why? Because the United States doesn't need 100,000 boots on the ground. We know this. And the region in Northeast Syria was very stable with 2,000 troops. The majority of the aggression came from our NATO ally. And American troops, if we recall a couple of years ago, American troops were threatened by Turkey, our so-called NATO ally. So resetting troops back to 2,000 after a Turkish withdrawal allows the United States to re-sow these betrayals, which just happened 2 years ago. Third, I would encourage President Biden to invite the SDF Syrian Democratic General Muslim Abdi to the White House. This, and along with their Syrian Democratic Council partners and political partners on there as well. This will send a strong signal to the U.S. adversaries and to Turkey that, hey, the Kurds are our allies. They are key to stability and peace in the region, and it will allow for frank face-to-face conversations between the SDF and SDC officials along with the U.S. officials. without interference from Turkey. And I think this will also, resow ties and show that, hey, the US is serious. And finally, what I always encourage to this administration, and I think, again, this is why I believe that we have the right components. I think this administration and this Congress can do this. It should invest this next 4 years to officially recognize the Syrian Democratic Forces as the official military of Northeast Syria. In addition to that, it must recognize the autonomous administration of North and East Syria as the legitimate governing body of Northeast Syria. We did this on a much larger scale with the Kurds in Iraq following the first Gulf War. We implemented a no-fly zone, and they established the Kurdistan regional government officially in 1992. And look at them today, they're governing themselves. And it's the safest place for American troops inside Iraq, and one of the safest in the Middle East as a whole for US troops. The same can happen, but it doesn't require American investment on a large scale. There is no, you don't have to put 100,000 boots on the ground. Your 2,000 troops is enough, because the SDF already has nearly, it might be even more now, of about 100,000 forces. You don't need US forces. The United States must understand that its presence is very symbolic. Waving a US flag will push back our adversaries. Russia will not. And remember, I don't know if you remember, we were talking about this on the Hill when the Russian mercenaries tried to attack the oil fields along the Euphrates. The United States struck them with our jets because they try to provoke the United States. United States presence is very symbolic, and it will also, and I don't believe in the argument that, hey, we had to leave because Turkey was about to rush in from the previous administration. Turkey will not threaten another NATO ally because they know that will be the end of their partnership within the NATO security bloc. Turkey's prized possession is NATO. They can commit all the crimes they want under the NATO umbrella because there's no mechanism, as you know very well, to remove Turkey. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Okay, Sinam, just if you can also give us a little bit more of a personal feeling of what it is that the Kurds who are within Syria, where they're living, how they've been dispersed from Afrin, and what their human conditions are like.
Thank you so much for EMET for organizing this panel. Thank you, Diliman, for all these things, really. When we talk about the Kurdish people in Syria, we should not forget the whole picture of Syria. We are a part of the Syrian people, and the Syrian issue will be solved within the Kurdish people also are there. So we should not be away from the solution for the Syrian issue. Now, 10 years have been, since 2011 till now, Syrian issue and the Syrian, as they call it, revolution, we could not reach to any solution for the Syrian issue now, for many reasons, of course. Let us say, now we have different outsider interfering in the Syrian issue. As for the fighters who came from many places to come and fight with the ISIS, as with the other fighters who are even joining the Free Syrian Army in the beginning, so that they call the Free Syrian Army, and they have the ideology of the Islamist radicalism, and as well as the regime insisting on the mentality to have the whole Syria and control it as it was before, as if nothing has happened. We know that 100,000 have been killed, millions have been displaced and been refugees all over the world. And still now, the regime is insisting on controlling the whole territory of Syria, ignoring what changes had happened. what are happening to in northeast Syria? What happened in the northwest Syria even now? Who is there? They ignore how many people now or forces are in Syria. We can say Russia, Iranian, US, Turkey, you know, and so many others. So within this whole pictures, how can we, as a Syrian, reach to a solution now? You know, unfortunately, many people who are Muslim radicals, they are accusing the Kurds in Syria as a separative, as they want to divide Syria. They want to have a Kurdish state in the north of Syria. And this is what we insist that we are a part of that. We are a part of the democratic solution of Syria. So as a Kurd, we have to get our rights in the future of Syria in the constitution. Unfortunately, till now, the Kurdish people are excluded, or not only the Kurdish people, the Northeast Syria, the SDC, the Autonomous Administration are excluded from all the peace talk in Geneva about Syria, excluded from the Constitution Committee. So how can the Constitution be written by some people, whereas third of the territory who are, more about 4 or 5 million people, they are not represented. So how can they write about the constitution of Syria, their future of Syria, where I'm as a Kurdish woman, as a Kurdish people, as a Syrian who are in the north of Syria, I'm not represented there. How? So who will guarantee my rights as a Kurdish people in Syria? Who will guarantee my rights there? The Islamist groups who are now calling themselves as the Syrian National Army, who is committing now in Afrin, in Tel Aviv, in Ras Al Ain, many crimes, we can say war crimes also is there committed in Afrin. Diliman, he talked about Afrin. I am from Afrin, and I know every day what's going on in Afrin. In 2018, when the Turkish and with these groups, armed groups backed by Turkey, they attacked Afrin. Afrin is a small city, not a big city. So imagine about 72 war planes shelling the city. So with the civilians are there, people are there. So all of them, they are afraid and they left the city. 300,000 people displaced from Afrin. Where are they now? They are in the camps, which is called the Shahba region. It's only 10 kilometers away from the city. And they are in the camp. And the situation of the camps is very, difficult there. As the regime also, they besiege this region. They don't allow the people who are sick to go to Aleppo city to get treatment, medical treatment. And they don't allow also, because it is the place where the regime also are there. Even the regime, they may besiege for the in Aleppo city, for the Kurdish district in Ashrafiyah, and it's called Sheikh Maqsood, most majority are Kurdish there. They made a besiege, they did not allow anything to go inside this region now recently. So the situation is very difficult. Medical, is lack of the medicine, lack of medical treatment. The people there, they are waiting now 3 years, they are waiting to go back to their homes and to their villages, but it is in vain. What's going on in Afrin now, it's really shame. I don't know, the whole world, turn blind eyes over what Afrin. They are looking to the other side of the world, as if what's going in Afrin, it is going in the other planet maybe, So we can see in Afrin, 70 cases of the women have been killed. 70 women being killed in Afrin. They tortured, they kidnapped, they be killed. 68 being raped. The Kurdish people in Afrin now, because some of them, they are still in Afrin. They refuse to leave Afrin. But now if we go to the Afrin, what is the majority now there, if we say the percentage, about more than 97% of the Afrin was Kurds. Now it is 23% only remaining are Kurds in Afrin. Who are the others? They are occupying their homes. My home is occupied there, and they are now from Idlib, from Ghouta, from Homs, from many other cities in Syria. So a massive demographic changing is going on in Africa. Systematically torturing the women and killing the women and kidnapping them. Kidnapping the civilians in order to pay ransom so they will leave them. Many times they kidnap the same person when knowing that he has some people in Europe to pay his ransom. So these people, they don't relate to the Syrian people actually, because the people who are torturing, they are Syrian. We are Syria. We are from part of Syria. So, you know, only because they are Kurdish people, they have been killed, been kidnapped, been raped, and as well as for the sources of resources of Afrin, which is the oil, olives, all these things had been taken from the people there with a very cheap prices, and they took it to Turkey, brand it, and they sold it in the international market. In America here, they have seen many of the olives oil in America here from Afrin, and even in Europe. So imagine all this, what's going on in Afrin with the human rights abuses, with the change of the demography, ethnic cleansing is going on there. Till now, when we ask it about, to send somebody to investigate about what's going on, nobody listens. They say, okay, we will make a pressure on Turkey to do that. How can I ask Turkey to investigate, whereas Turkey itself, with these armed groups, they are committing these war crimes there? It doesn't make any sense for us. So for that, I would like to ask here for the international independent committee, investigation committee, to go to Afrin and to be allowed to go there and to guarantee their safety and to investigate about all the war crimes happening in Afrin, and to hold these groups who are in Afrin and with the Turkey, the accountability for this committing these crimes. So otherwise, that time it will be just like, everybody is free to do whatever he wants. That does not, make any sense. And here I call the new administration of Biden, as they are very focused on the human rights abuses. So this is the time that they can send somebody to Afrin and investigate about that. Even the other places I'm talking about maybe Ras Al Ain, Sarikania, and Tal Abyad, even there also it happened, So many cases it documented there. Yeah. As well as in the other also, let us say the other region which is occupied by Turkey, like Jarablus, like Elbab, like, all these places now, the groups, the armed groups themselves, they have conflict, clashes among themselves, which lead to destabilize the places there. Many civilians, they pay their lives for these things. So where Turkey is there, wherever Turkey is there, or the other group are there, the chaos is there, security chaos is there, and many abuses for human rights is happening there. So this is what we are seeing now. So as Diliman, he said, we have to look at Turkey, not what was Turkey before, what is Turkey now? Yeah, this is the problem. Turkey has been changed now. Turkey is doing a lot of abuses for the human rights for Syria, and it has ambitions to occupy more and more land from Syrian lands. And this is its goal, actually. Even today, they targeted the place in northeast of Syria, which is called Tel Tamer. The majority are Christians there, in the M4, the main street, road there, they targeted there, and a child of 6-year-old had been injured there. So it is not now. If we want to know, what should we do as the Syrian people and the Kurdish people? We know that SDC, it is having a goal or having a project. How can we solve the problem in Syria? How could we should not ignore or exclude one part of the Syrian people not to be at the peace talk. This is one. Another thing we should ask, as I'm again joining my voice to Diliman when he said, Turkey should withdraw from the Syria. If we want to reach a solution, Turkey should withdraw from Syria. Not from Afrin only, from Afrin, from Jarablus, from, in Arai, which is even in the north Syria, they built a university related to the Turkish administration. So it is becoming a part of Turkey. If nobody speaks, that time Turkey will join it to the Turkish state, and it's okay like that. And this is, very dangerous what Turkey is, thinking about now. So if we ask that Turkey withdraw from the Syria, all the Syrian people who believe in democracy, because the real democracy only solution how to solve the problem of the Kurds and minorities like Syriac, like, Christians, Yazidi, and so on. So the real democracy, to change the system in Syria into a democratic system, to have a decentralized system, which we believe in as a decentralized system in Syria, it will be the solution. How can we reach now? So we have to reach to all the Syrian democratic groups who believes in this project and who believes that it is now time to end the bloodshed in Syria. So that time we can sit at the table together, we can discuss the solution together, we can discuss the decentralized system, and we will be that time, asking the regime there in government, Syrian government, to have this, with the international, of course, like United Nations and all this, they have to make pressure on them. And now the main player in Syria, first they are Russia, which is the one that is, having pressure on the Syrian regime, and they can do that, and even the United States, the US. Even recently, we did not hear from the US administration a lot about Syrian, who will be responsible for the Syrian issue or Syrian file, we don't hear. But even we know that, I call on the Biden administration to focus on Syria now, to end this Syrian issue, to end the Syrian problem, and with the even guarantee the rights of all the people there, like Kurdish people, one of them, who sacrificed their lives. 11,000 people be killed in order to defeat ISIS and the terrorism. These terrorism, they are not only threatening our region, not threatening the Syria, they were threatening the whole world. And we witnessed how they commit many crimes in whole Europe. As for that, I can say our people, they fought on behalf of all the world there. And this is what should we respect that. 24,000 people from our forces injured in this war. And we liberated not only Kurdish cities. We started from Kobani, the Kurdish city, but we liberated the other city, which is not only Kurdish city, like Deir Zor, as an Arab city. But we believe that if we live in safe, our neighbor also will be safe, we will be safe together. So this is what we believe in. Our forces, they pay a high price in liberating the Arab cities also, like Deir Zor, like Raqqa, the capital city of the ISIS. It is a very big victory happened there, but unfortunately at the end, ignoring the Kurdish people, ignoring those SDF, the forces which is, have a lot of price to liberate this city from ISIS, and again, as if they are not there, it is not fair. It is not fair at all. For that, I ask it to the new administration, and I hope that they can include the Kurdish people there and include SDC and the administration, autonomous administration in the peace talk and the constitution committee. And the Turkey must withdraw from the Syria so that we can reach to a solution. As well as, I mean, in the constitution, we have to know that Kurdish issue is a big issue in the region, not only in Syria. You mentioned in the beginning, there are 45 million all over in 4 countries. So whatever is going on, Turkey is attacking our region, accusing us that we are terrorists. So I don't know what kind of terrorists they are, I mean, telling about us, you know. If we are terrorists, the children of 6 and 5 years are not terrorists. If they are accusing of terrorists, we are the one who fight the terrorists. We are not terrorists. We are fighting the terrorists. We are I mean, asking to have a system based on equal gender, on a system on religious of freedom, on the system based on democracy, so that all the components in Syria should have their rights to live in freedom and dignity. This is what we're for. So I don't think these are the value that is we sharing with the Western country, with the United States. These are value of the terrorist people. They are not at all. So I will start, and if there is any question, I can.
Okay, thank you so much, both to you, Sinam, and to Diliman, of course. Let me take the liberty of asking the first questions. First of all, you had mentioned the United Nations. This would be a very important issue to take to the International Criminal Court in The Hague, all of Turkey's war crimes. What kind of status does Kurdistan, do the Kurds have within the United Nations? Do you have observer status? Do you have any status to be able to have your voice heard within the international community and the United Nations?
It's for me? Okay.
Yeah, for either of you.
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, we don't have a status for the Kurdish people in the United Nations, you know. So till now, so far, we are not recognized as, you know, we are a part of Syria, and the Syrian government is there, representative of the Syrian government, not know what's going on. Right. So nobody is there. So for that, we hope that we want that our voice reach the United Nations, to the Organization of the Human Rights, or the, you know, in the United Nations, so that they can, I mean, we are very happy to help in so information we have about that. And this is what I ask, that United Nations can send a committee, investigation committee, to go to Afrin or to other region there. This is what I mean, say. So unfortunately, we don't have our voice there. So our voice is heard from the others who are not helping us, who are against the presence of the Kurds people, even in Syria or in Turkey.
Right. And Diliman, you mentioned the rise of Al-Qaeda and of ISIS. Do you have any statistics about where Al-Qaeda and ISIS are reemerging?
Definitely. So we know Al-Qaeda's largest hub is in Idlib province. A lot of Al-Qaeda affiliates and also U.S. designated terrorists, individuals are based there. And around that area are Turkish outposts, our so-called NATO ally, which has failed to put any pressure on removing these groups. They continue to remain a threat across northeast Syria and also into Iraq as well, in the northern regions in Kirkuk, the deserted areas in Kirkuk. So ISIS remains a threat, and this is the main reason why the Pentagon recently stated our focus is ISIS, not the oil, which is a legitimate and I think rational approach. And, you know, there's also a threat of, you know, a reemergence of ISIS, a much stronger ISIS. If the United States decides to withdraw, there will be a gap. someone will fill it. It won't be just the state actors. It'll be these non-state radical actors that will threaten the civilian population. And also, we have to keep in mind, Northeast Syria is not just civilians. It's not just the indigenous population. They are refugees there as well, who have taken refuge in Northeast Syria, fleeing from ISIS in Mosul, in Shingal, the Yazidi areas as well.
And one other question to you, Diliman. Who were the senators that led the letter?
Yeah, Senator Wyden and Senator Rubio. Senator Schumer was on there. So it was a total of 54 senators, which is
Wonderful.
great. It was a bipartisan effort.
Bipartisan. Excellent.
And the great thing about this is come out so early in the new Congress and the new administration. So this administration has no reason or excuse. It has 4 years to implement these asks.
Excellent, excellent. I'm a little worried that there are some holdovers from the Obama administration, and I remember Obama saying that famous statement, if we see you using chemical weapons or moving them, and then there was this horrible thing that happened at Ghouta afterwards, and he just turned his back.
The famous red line.
The famous red line, that's our red line, right? All right. Anyway, so there are many, many questions that have come in. We apologize if we aren't able to answer all of them, and I'm going to turn the podium over to our wonderful Director of Communications, Sarah Leah Thompson, who will read the questions. Thank you, Sarah Leah.
Of course. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Diliman and Sinam, for joining us today. So the first question that we have, and perhaps Sinam, you could start. Who are the Kurds allies, and roughly how many Kurds are there?
Okay. The Kurds in Syria, actually, they are, most of them in the north of Syria, in Afrin, in Kobani, Jazeera, it's about there, and even in the other city in Syria, in Damascus and all other places. So it is about, the number of the Kurds, it's just nearly about 3.5 million in Syria. Now, most of them, refugees, and, they left because of the war and so on. The allies of the Kurds, I think they are the allies of the democracy and the allies of the values that we call for. We have allies. We are not, before they used to say only Kurds, they don't have friends on the only mountain. I think now we have mountain of friends, and this is what we are happy for them. Many people here, they are supporting the Kurds, and in public, in the Congress, they are also supporting. After seeing the Kurds, they are sacrificing themselves in order to defeat the terrorists, this one. And I hope that the United States will help these people in order, we are not asking something which is very abnormal. It is something very, logical for our people as a people to have their rights in this, in this region. So we have many Kurds, we have many allies, and still we need more allies to be active and in decision making in order to support the Kurds and to solve the Kurdish issue. One of the problems in the Middle East now is the Kurdish issue. How could we solve it? Many of for instance, in Turkey, there is a Kurdish issue. In Syria, there is a Kurdish issue. In Iran, in the same. Even in Iraq now, even we have the region of Kurdistan, still we have many problems there. So I think ignoring or denying that there is a Kurdish issue, it doesn't make any sense. It will increase the problem more and more. But when we say that there is an issue, we have to solve it. We can solve it in a through dialogue, through negotiations, and this would be good for all the region, not only for the Kurds, for the whole region.
Great, thank you. And next question for Diliman: why don't the Kurds in Syria, Turkey, and Iraq unite into a single autonomous region?
That's the That's the hardest question. You know, this is part of my work. This is what I do every day, and I encourage unity. I think the Kurds, you know, we're not a couple of 100,000. The Kurds are a nation state, are a nation of 45 million plus. And historically, you know, they have been betrayed, but I still encourage all Kurdish officials and leaders to tackle the issues that we're facing today within their own. We have to, you know, many might not like to hear this, but we do have to have our house in order, and in order for the international community to help us as well. There are efforts by the United States as well among the different Kurdish factions inside Syria in unity talks. These are great steps, and we encourage that to take place across Kurdistan and what we call Kurdistan, but in the effort among Kurds themselves, they have to take that approach. And I think if the Kurds do unite, there's not a force that can stop them. We saw them unite in Kobani, when the Peshmerga forces assisted towards the end, assisted the Syrian Kurds and the women fighters. You know, there were YPG and Peshmerga forces hand in hand there. They loved it. We loved it. The Kurds gathered together. But we have to unite on the political platform as well. And I think as long as we are divided, and as long as I believe personally, as long as we are considered non-state actors, our adversaries will continue to poke at us. And the result of that will be civilian lives.
Thank you. And now back to Sinam. Are the Iran and Syrian Assad regime protecting the Kurds?
No, of course not. No. Actually, now we have a lot of threat from the Syrian regime to our region. And recently there are many, I told about the besiege happening there, you know, and actually we wanted to have a dialogue with the Syrian regime, but they are not accepting that. They don't want to accept the reality that changes happening in Syria for within 10 years. So I don't, no, they are not helping. But you know, we are managing all together because they are existed in our region also, where we are there in the northeast Syria. Not only Syrian regime, we have the Russian, we have the US, we have the SDF, we have many there. So we are coordinating with all these players who are on the ground. It is our duty. I mean, we can't, if we didn't do it, that would be problematic there. It will be a very dangerous, I mean, so we're managing. And if they are not helping. They want to control it again. They want to control all the region again as it was before 2011.
And if I may add, the Kurds are negotiating with the Assad regime, not because they want to, or, you know, there's argument in Washington among especially in the think tank world, saying that, oh, look, the Kurds are hand in hand with the Assad regime. This is not true. They are, remember, the Kurds are considered non-state actors. And the Kurds have to negotiate with these factors because, especially when there is no credibility and real partnership on the ground, they must negotiate with the people that are in charge of 60% of Syrian territory. That's the Assad regime, whether we like it or not. Sarah mentioned the red line in 2013. This could have been prevented. But the negotiations that the Kurds are engaged in, it's because of necessity and survival and long-term strategy, not because they simply want to talk with the Assad regime.
And because we are excluded actually from the negotiation, the peace talk, you know.
Thank you so much. And Diliman, perhaps you can comment on this next question to start. How are you going to get Biden to support you when he seems to be following Obama's playbook?
And, you know, that's our fear, is to carve, and that's in my introduction, I mentioned that he must carve his own path and not replay the playbook, re-engage in the same playbook as the Obama administration did. Because remember what the Obama administration did. They wanted funding for the so-called Free Syrian Army. We invested hundreds of millions of dollars in the FSA, which later failed, which they became radical Islamists, which then later fought against us. That was the strategy, and they wanted to create a so-called safe zone, which is now created in partnership with the Turks. This is not a strategy. This failed. We can't go back. We have to see the reality look at it. I recommend this new administration is to just look at the map in Syria. Is it rational to withdraw? Where are the military bases? I mean, we have to go back to the basics. Who are these people being protecting? There's IDPs, there's refugees, and the resources, of course. We can't have these fall into the wrong hands. And so the strategy previously is not the right strategy. And I think the Biden administration, for Biden himself and his own legacy, must carve out his own path and not repeat the same mistakes as in the previous administration and the one before that.
Can I add something? As the previous, from Obama administration till now, many changes has happened. It is not the same situation. So for that, I think this is what I hope, that the new administration of President Obama will be looking at the issue with different view, because it has been changed now. And even in our region now, if you look at our region, we have about 12 fighters of the ISIS in the detainee centers in our region. We are looking after that. We are, securing this region from these fighters. And about 63,000 of their families, women and children, in the camp of Al-Hol. And recently, I think the United Nations, they documented about that and talking about this Al-Hol, asking to rehabilitate or to repatriate these people. But who is taking care of that? Who is securing this? We are securing that. The administration, the autonomous administration of north of Syria. And this is nobody care about that. You imagine if they are, they try to run away from these detention centers. So what would happen that time? It is just like a timing bomb, the threat to all the people in Syria. And even they need to go to Turkey. Whenever they want to fly, they go to Turkey, to their safest place.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Diliman, if you would like to start with the comments toward it. It's a couple of questions grouped together. Why does the SDC not form diplomatic ties with the state of Israel? What is Israel's relationship with the Kurds? And are there currently any Jews in the Kurdish areas?
Excellent questions. So if we have to look at the Kurdish issue as a whole, not just specifically the SDC, the Kurds have historical relations and ties with Israel and the Jews. It was the Kurds that assisted many Jews from Iraq to flee the country after the founding of the independent state of Israel in 1948 in early 50s. To this day, of course, there's COVID ties, this secret ties that have, they've established throughout history. But it is a double-edged sword for the Kurds to just come out and say Israel, because we have to keep in mind, put ourselves in the perspective of the Kurds. Look at our neighbors. They're hostile to Israel as a state. Imagine if a non-state actor comes out and says, yes, we want to work with Israel in this hostile region and neighborhood. The Kurds would be their cities would be razed to the ground. We saw that happen in 2017 when the KRG, the Kurdistan region, come out with the independence referendum. The only state that recognized the referendum was Israel. And the Shiite militias and all around the countries around us promised, hey, we are not going to allow a second Israel to take place. And that's the Kurds. And they see the independent Kurdistan as a threat, as a second Israel. So this is the situations the Kurds are facing, and unfortunately, this is our reality. So it's not that the Kurds don't want ties or relations; it's because we have to think about, the realities around us, and that's the neighborhood.
Is survival, and I think that these are incredibly heroic people. I think the West and the entire world actually owes you a tremendous debt of gratitude. The Kurds have been left with this thankless job of guarding the ISIS fighters in their prisons, and are treated abysmally, and they have been over and over again. I have to say, as a Jew, this great sage Hillel said in Hebrew, if I'm not for myself, who am I for, but if I'm only for myself, what am I? And we do understand, people with our past do understand and appreciate what it's like not to be independent and not to have your own sovereign state and to be at the whims of really despots and dictators and terrorists and terrorist regimes. And I hope and pray that within the next 4 years there will be an independent, free Kurdistan. So thank you very, very much, Sinam and Diliman. I should say, if you would like to support the American Friends of Kurdistan, what is your website, Diliman?
Oh, thank you for that, Sarah. AmericanFriendsOfKurdistan.org.
AmericanFriendsOfKurdistan.org. You know, we remember who our friends are, and Diliman has been a longstanding friend. I would like you all to tune in next week. We are beginning to get some concerns about some of the appointments in the new Biden administration, and Steve Emerson, who is actually the first person that discovered that there are Islamist terrorist cells in this country, will be talking about some of the relationships of some of these people with the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement, and with the regime of Iran. Of course, as always, this costs us a great deal of money. If anybody would like to support EMET, you're free to come support us at www.emetonline.org. And we're looking forward to seeing the American Friends of Kurdistan prosper, and Kurdistan prosper and being successful in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.